Uh, Hello, everyone. My name is Gavin Lee. I'm the editor of the recently published book, Queer Ear, Remaking Music Theory. And I'm here with two of our authors, Kristen Francing and Bill Solomon. Christine is currently a postdoctoral fellow in history and research affiliate in the Simone de Beauvoir Institute at Concordia University, where her work is supported by the Society and Culture Research Fund of Quebec. Her research is published in 19th century music and music and letters. She's also the author of the recently published Imagining Musical Pasts, the Queer Literary Musicology of Vernon Lee, Rosa Newmarch, and Edward Prime Stevenson. Bill Solomon is co-chair of music at the Dalton School in New York City and performs as a percussionist. He completed a dissertation on queer influences in the percussion works of West Coast composers. So let me start with you, Christine. Could you tell us what your chapter is about and how you came to this topic?
Sure, yeah. So my chapter is about the kind of analytical writings of Edward Prime Stevenson, who was an early 20th century music critic, who also sort of self-published in the field of sexology. And in particular, I look at what I argue is his queer reading of Beethoven's instrumental works. And I came to this subject kind of by way of my dissertation, which is on the history of musicology. And I'm really interested in kind of thinking about musicologists and theorists in history as people, the same way we think of biographies of composers and performers. And I'm really kind of excited to think more critically about how people in kind of queer history and other histories have related to music history and found either inspiration or community or other sorts of connections with people and with historical musics.
And your chapter comes in a section of a book that's titled Queer Narratology. So, and you've kind of answered that already, but is there something else that you want to add in terms of which direction you're taking queer narratology towards?
Yeah, I didn't, before this book project, I didn't really think of myself as doing narratology. I tend to think of myself as more of a history of music theory sort of person. But I think what my chapter provides is a historical context for this sort of narrative reading of music and sort of showing that these possibilities of queer readings and of other sorts of counter readings of pretty mainstream musical works, that this isn't a new thing that we're sort of imposing now on prior musical traditions, that this is something people at different points in history have had strong feelings about and have experimented with.
I just want to say that I really enjoyed your chapter. It's so interesting to read about Prime Stevenson. I recall particularly that he wrote a program for Beethoven's Symphony No. 9 called Prince Bedee's Quest, which is about a prince who remains a bachelor. So, and in that sense, exhibits a queer positionality. So, fantastic contribution to our book.
Thank you.
Let me turn to you, Bill. Tell us a little bit about what your chapter is about and how you came to this topic.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Gavin. So happy to be part of this project. So my chapter is called Queering Musical Chrononormativity, the Percussion Works of the West Coast Group. And I guess I should start all of this. I am a practicing percussionist. That's all my degrees were in performance. And so when I'm looking at this work, it's through the eyes of a queer person who's also playing percussion and is really interested in pulling out all these threads of percussion history and performance. I'm specifically looking at how these works, early works of American percussion repertoire were really influenced by Asian culture and how Cage, Cal, and Harrison were using Asian culture as a way to express their desire, their erotics, and trying to create this other world, this utopia in which they could exist and live. I think that temporality and chromonormativity are really important when we're discussing percussion, because we're not dealing so much with pitch material, we're dealing with rhythm, we're dealing with timbre. And so temporality seems like a really great place where we can start to explore ways in which queerness rears itself in these compositions.
Yeah, and there are a number of chapters actually in the book, in the section on queer temporality, which is something that a lot of people are becoming excited about. There's your chapter, there's Chris Dover's chapter, and then there's my chapter as well. Tell us a little bit about your take on queer temporality.
Yeah, you know, it's I definitely had been reading a lot of queer theory that's looking at temporality and different ways that queer people experience time in different ways than heteronormative people. Maybe our lives are out of order in a different way, and different pressures exist or are relieved from straight society, and that would reveal itself in someone's music. So looking at the ways in which the West Coast composers were wanting to get away from Western capitalist society and wanted to create this sort of timeless space. So their construction of, you know, frozen time, the way they imagined Eastern culture might actually exist, is really fascinating. And I think temporality is just this other pathway that we can look at music through that's more felt, it feels more embodied to me, more effectual, and it's fun to try to articulate that in words.
It was so interesting for me to read your interpretation of the different models of temporality and, as you said, the stasis in a lot of these places when West Coast composers were portraying or depicting more exotic locales. So again, a very, very interesting contribution. So maybe some brief final thoughts. Where would you say queer music theory is going? Either of you, maybe.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most excited about with this book and with talking to other people who are like doing queer music theory in the world is just sort of opportunity, that there isn't kind of one way or one repertoire or one approach to doing queer music theory. There's sort of lots of people experimenting with sort of different ways of doing music theory at all, but then specifically sort of different queer approaches. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think building off of that, Kristen, for me, what's especially, I work with children. That's my day job, is teaching children and seeing people confront issues of identity in their lives, whether it's sexuality or gender or race or ability, and really finding ways to connect the art that we make, and how it impacts our lives and how that can bring people together, how we can create political solidarity. I know that feels really lofty, but it does feel real to me that exploring this music can impact people and how they relate to the world. So that's my hopes for the future of queer musicology and queer music theory.
Yeah, absolutely. What I found so interesting in this book is that it's one part of it is about queer composers expressing themselves, but the other part of it is queer listeners finding these bits of queerness within music. And so again, so wonderful to have the two of you in our book. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.